Good evening. I'm glad. Oh, really? Good evening. Oh, it's good to see all of you. I mean, hi. So welcome. We're delighted that you're here, and we have lots and lots of people to thank. You'll have plenty of opportunity to do that. Not only the building committee, but also other leaders in the life of the church from the Servant Leadership Board and many other places that have done heroic work to present to you tonight a plan for us in the future. So I'm going to begin with prayer, and then I'm going to introduce our district superintendent who will chair our meeting tonight. Will you join me in prayer? Holy God, we thank you for the opportunities that we have before us. We get to do your ministry every day in the world because you have decided that you would bless us with all sorts of gifts that surround us in this very place. Those who have gone on before us and have created space and place so that we could be engaged in ministry in all the world. And so we ask that you watch over us and bless us as we make important decisions about our future and important decisions about our present season in which we live. So watch over us and offer us your grace and your mercy. Be with us, for it's in your name that we pray. Amen. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our district superintendent, the Reverend Jim Wilson, who is arising in the pulpit. Jim and I have known each other for a long time. We were neighboring pastors in Westerville 100 years ago. And because Suzanne Allen is the district superintendent in this district but had served this church, we have a rule in our annual conference that you cannot be a superintendent of a church that you had previously served. So Jim is here tonight, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to him. Welcome, Jim.
My honor to be here this evening.
Oh, press the button.
Yeah. How about that? It works. Sorry. My honor to be here this evening, and on behalf of Bishop Jung, he wanted me to tell you hello this evening and how much he is so excited and pleased with the ministry of Hyde Park and all that comes along with this congregation. So thank you for all that you're doing in ministry. We'll get right to the business this evening. I would like to make the motion of that Meredith would be our secretary for this specially called church conference. Is there a second? Yep, I see a second. Any questions? If you approve Meredith being our secretary, you will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. And that motion passes. First up this evening, we'd like to invite Victoria to welcome us and do some introductions.
Good evening, everyone. Can I get like a 2 thumbs up if you can hear me? Thank you, Patty, all the way in the back. I'm not used to being up front. I usually sit in the back with my family, so this is a little bit of a different point of view for me today. But welcome, Victoria Coleman, for those of you who I have not met. I am happy to be here with all of you this evening and want to say thank you for your turnout and for your attention to the presentations we are about to see. Before that, I want to review the materials you should have received on your way in. You should all have a copy of the PowerPoint. You should all have a copy of the Capital Campaign Goals Thermometer. You should all have a copy of the Robert's Rules of Order Simplified. Okay, very exciting for those of you who are enthusiasts for Robert's Rules of Order. And you should have ballot 1, which is blue, and ballot 2, which is yellow. If any of you are missing any of these items, please let us know by raising your hand and someone can walk those out to you. Terrific. We've already passed the first step. So, we are super excited to have members of our building committee here with us this evening presenting. I want to acknowledge all of the great work they have done throughout this process, and Al and I wanted to give a special thank you, which she will hate, to Meredith for her phenomenal work pulling everything together behind the scenes since April. So if we can all give her a round of applause. Thank you for indulging me. All right, we will move on to our next slide. Our building committee voting members. So if these individuals can stand up. Again, we had many, many hours of meetings over the summer. These individuals that you voted on gave up so many hours of sunshine and so much thought and brain power and intentionality and care to this process. So can we please acknowledge the building committee? I would also like to acknowledge the building committee ex officio non-voting members who were also present and gave up all of those hours and did all those things that I also previously said. So if you would stand to be recognized as well. Terrific. And next slide, Todd. We have a few special guests here that we want to introduce. Reverend Brian Gath, who I am meeting by way of, hello, speaking. If you want to stand up, Brian is associate pastor at St. Paul UMC in Madeira, and he is the parliamentarian of the West Ohio Annual Conference. Yeah, we'll clap for Madeira. So his role this evening is to keep track of all of the motions made. So again, this Robert's Rules of Order, I understand he has it memorized, so I am sure things will go totally according to the order. We also have a few representatives from Found House Interfaith Housing Network. They are a longtime cherished partner of Hyde Park Methodist, and they will be a key collaborator, as you will hear, in the upcoming capital campaign. So we have a few representatives here with us who I would invite to stand. The Vice President of Programs, Christy Roberson, and the Board Vice President, Brian Henning. And then we would be remiss to not ask Alan Williams, Senior Architect with MSA Design, to stand to be recognized. Alan, thank you. Alan has also given us many hours of his time, and MSA has been a terrific partner for Paul and Dennis and committee as we have put together a lot of these proposals and drawings for tonight. So I believe that was my last intro. I will be back at the end to just wrap things up, but now it's my pleasure to welcome my co-chair, Dr. Al Painter, to take the microphone, and he will preview our agenda and goals for tonight's conference.
Well, she is so much better than I am, so you're just going to have to listen for about 5 minutes and maybe less, and then we'll move on. Our agenda for this evening starts with how we got here and where we are, Jeff Sheldon and Dennis Larrick. The building committee recommendation featuring Jason Abbott, Dennis Larrick, and Mary Wheeler, followed by question and answer with the building committee and presenters and others. And then the motion, building committee recommendation, Nick Pearson. And then the first ballot vote will be taken. Following that, we will have the endowment committee recommendation, the question and answer, and the committee recommendation by Shane Brown, and then the second ballot, vote 2 at that point, and then you will see Victoria and I come back up and talk about other matters that we have to discuss with our current leadership.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff Sheldon. I am the current chair of the Servant Leadership Board, and via that position, I was also one of the ex officio members of the Building Committee. I'm going to provide you a real quick review of how we got here tonight. Now, I'm saying it's a review, what we started last fall, but we've acquired a number of new members since then, so I'm hoping there are new members here, so it's not review for them, it's going to be some new information. At any rate, last fall our church contracted Horizon Stewardship to form a feasibility study and to determine if, in the minds and hearts of our members, you, a capital campaign might be possible. Now, my guess is the vast majority of you, if not everyone here tonight, participated in the survey. We had a total, the survey had 145 responses online, and many of you were probably interviewed as well. So the feasibility study basically garnered two big bits of information. Number one, do you think we can have a capital campaign? And if you remember, there were questions, for instance, would the planned improvements really help the church carry out its missions and ministries? Or do you feel the church has the right leadership to carry out a campaign? And there were others about, obviously, money and some other things like that. But basically, your responses were favorable as far as a capital campaign, the possibility of one. Following those questions, you were asked to rank certain projects that we were considering by importance to you. We'll take a look at those. So first off, the scores that you see on the right, let me explain those. They were ranked from 1 to 4, 4 being the most important to you and 1 being of no importance to you. And so if we look at what your top priority was solving the water infiltration problem, that means the flooding in the basement, that garnered a score of 3.86, pretty close to 4, so it was very important. And then on down the line. So looking at, so that's what the scores mean up there. Let's look at your 8 priorities. Solving the water infiltration problem. We know the basement leaks, we know it keeps us from using the basement, and we know we spend a lot of money cleaning it up. So that was everybody's top priority. Second one was mechanical systems like boilers and piping. This was specifically for the Hyde Park campus. Energy efficiency, lowering our carbon footprint. Now, that in and of itself is not a project. But it, as you will see when you see what the building committee presents to you, it was the reasoning and the rationale behind many of the projects that we would like to complete. Replacing windows and window protection at the Hyde Park campus was number 4. We go on to the next slide. We have installing new heating and cooling mini splits in the Hyde Park campus. Adding accessibility to one or both buildings at the OTR campus, over the Rhine, if you're not familiar with that acronym yet. Replacing windows, fixtures, window protection, actually tuck pointing a lot of physical stuff to the OTR campus. And finally, creating a community nonprofit laundromat in current laundromat desert of over the Rhine. What I would like you to note when you see what the building committee presents to you, what you said was important to you is in the proposals. We paid a lot of attention to that. So you should also be aware that with the exception of the very first priority, the big dig, that was kind of a no-brainer. Past that, every one of these proposals was examined and discussed and debated and reworked and re-examined. In some cases, we formed subcommittees just to take a closer look at a proposed project. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the building committee's presentation. This committee has worked diligently to form a plan that can launch this church, this community, into its second 100 years. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dennis Larrick.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, winter sports fans. I'm Dennis Lyric, one of the co-chairs of the building committee, along with this young fella over here, Paul Bolster. And I want to start off by saying, even though I'm up here flapping my gums, he's the one that did all the work. Because all of the numbers you will see tonight came from him. It's a big job to figure out what it's going to cost for one of these capital campaigns. First of all, you have to find a contractor that can give you an estimate. Then you have to find an engineer to do the drawing so the contractor can do the estimate. And then you have to put all this together. So Paul is the one that's done all the work, and if you don't like the numbers tonight, blame Paul. Kate and I were talking the other night, and we thought that we don't want to go through the history of the church. That would take all night. But it might be good to give some insight about what it was like to get this church going, and especially to save it during the Depression, so that we can understand why it's so important for us to preserve the buildings we've got, both up here and downtown. So I'm going to start off by saying that many of you already know that this is the 100th anniversary this year of laying the cornerstone right outside that door out there. In fact, we had a stonemason here that worked on this building that was so excited about the project, he and his wife got married standing on the cornerstone. 2 years later, in September of 27, we opened the building. So the building was built during the Roaring '20s, and everyone was flush with money, right? Maybe not. We got to go back to the time they were planning on building this building, which was 1922 or so. We had just gone through World War I. The cost of living practically doubled during World War I. Then we went through about 2 years or so of post-war recession. So that's the environment that they planned this building. They didn't know the Roaring '20s were coming yet. They were also up against a kind of an unusual congregation, because this building, or this property, was given to us by John Kilgore in 1880. He was a real estate guy who also happened to own the Cincinnati trolley cars and Cincinnati Bell, you know. And he gave us this land, and they built a wooden church that would actually fit inside this room. Mount Lookout Methodist Episcopal. And they went for about 10 years, and then Hyde Park over at the square started developing. And people started coming over here to go to church. In fact, at one time, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the new members were coming from Hyde Park. Well, they got the idea, you know, this is a bummer going over here to this little wooden church that's many blocks away, slogging through the snow. Let's build our own church. So in 1909, they started a church on Hyde Park Square. And it is still there. It's painted sort of a bluish gray. It's a medical center next to where the library was. But that church had problems. First of all, they designed it too small. It was only 300 seats. Second of all, it had a bad foundation. The kids were shooting rubber bands at, what do you call them, roaches. They were disappointed they couldn't hold Sunday school in the basement because it had water problems. Does that sound familiar? And then they had this little problem that it had a 10-alarm fire. And they lost just about everything except the shell of the building and the organ. So they had to start meeting over at the town hall right across the street again. And that's when they started thinking, maybe we should go a little bit bigger. And they were going to buy the property where Redeemer is. But instead, they looked at this and said, wait a minute, there's already property there. Let's tear down that wooden church. Well, if you were a member of Mount Lookout, how would you feel about that? We know about half of the Mount Lookout people split off and went over and started building a church over here on Corbett Avenue in a basement. And that's still there. There's a house on top of it now. So part of the church was sort of, you know, coming together, and part of them were sort of going apart. So that's sort of part of the environment it was like. Then there was the experiment. The Methodist Architectural Committee in Philadelphia was trying to find, I won't call them guinea pigs, but I will call them churches that were looking to be a little bit different, who would like to build a church that is a combination community center and church. Everything behind that wall was once called our community house. And how successful that was, I don't know, but I've only found a half a dozen of them they ever built. And I went to the one in Kansas City, which was the first one, and they never even built their community house. So it may not have been the best experiment. So that's what we were up against. We were up against a financial time that wasn't all that steady, a congregation that may not have been all that steady, and we were going to build an experimental church. They set a goal. When we get $500,000 worth of pledges, we're going to start construction. That's about $9 million in today's money. Well, they got to about 400 and some change, and then they had a problem because some people had tied their pledge to reaching 500 by a certain date. And that date was coming up fast, and they didn't have the 500. So that's when members of this church started going out and beating the bushes in the neighborhood and asking everyone else in the neighborhood to help support this combination church and community center. We had Baptists, we had Presbyterians, we had atheists, we had Jewish people, we had everyone kicking in with pledges. Notice I said pledges, not money. And we reached the 500,000, which is about 9 million today. The church actually cost 687,000, which is about 12.5 million today. So they got it open, and everyone was excited. And only about 1 year later, some of those people that were not members of the church said, I don't know if I'd use that gymnasium. I'm not going to pay that pledge. So by 1928, we already had a problem, and then 1929, the Depression hit, and we had a big crash, and we had a lot of problems. 1 year during the Depression, we had expenses of $70,000 and income of $27,000. About 8 of the trustees of the church put up mortgages on their own houses to save this building. The Anson Fry, who was the CEO of Gibson Greeting Cards, he put up all the stock he had in his own company to save this building. All of the women went together and created one big women's organization and did 50-cent chicken dinners to save this building. They tried to take away our chimes. They tried to take away the organ, and we survived. It was not an easy time. And one of the problems we had, everyone thinks that people lost money in the stock market. They were losing their own money. It wasn't always their own money. Some people had borrowed money to get into the stock market, so now they owed other people money with interest. And if you put money into the stock market right before the crash, it was 25 years before you broke even again, 1954. 1954 was the year that this church finally went up there with a silver plate and put the mortgage on the plate and burned it. That was also the year we replaced the coal-fired boilers with gas-fired boilers. And it was the year that all of these windows, see all those yellow fixtures up there? That's what the windows used to be. 54 is when they started putting in stained glass. So that's where we've come from. It was a tough time, and I think it's important to know that, because tonight we're talking about making a commitment of preserving what we have, preserving this great gift they've given to us, so that we can pass it on to the next generation. Okay, enough about that. We've got the slide up there. So the building committee started off with basically 6 parameters to look at. One of them was the survey from last year. And anytime we take a major vote, I would make a chart which had our vote on one side and the chart you just saw from Jeff on the other side to see if we're aligning. That was the first and most important thing. The second thing we took into account is this is one church with 2 campuses. It's not 2 churches, it's one church with 2 campuses. And we wanted to make sure each campus's mission got their fair share of the money. So, as you look at this board up here and your little thermometer sheet you picked up, you will see that we started with a Hyde Park project, then an over the Rhine, then a Hyde Park, then an over the Rhine, then a Hyde Park, and so forth up the line, to make sure both of them got equal. Then we started looking at preservation. We just talked about that. We looked at mission. That's why we're here. Mission outside of ourselves in many cases. And then we talked about accessibility. Now, accessibility can be the young couple having to carry strollers up the steps, or accessibility can be you and I And whether we don't like to talk about it or not, some of us might be in a stroller again someday. And then sometimes accessibility is not getting somewhere easier. Sometimes accessibility is making it harder to get somewhere. Modern churches are making their children's wing into a security zone where there's a checkpoint to get in and out. And our building is set up that we could almost do that right now, except for the fact the elevator is in the wrong end of the building. So Mary's going to be talking about that a little bit later. And then we're going to talk about energy efficiency. That is ministering to the world, ministering to the future. So I think we can go to the next slide now. Let's go to the first project there. Okay. So the first project is the Big Dig, taking care of the water in the basement. I don't think I actually have to sell you on that because that was the first thing on last year's survey. But I do want you to know the scope of the project so you're not totally terrified when you see what we're tearing up. Up here you see a plan view I drew. Our building was built in two parts. The first part was built in 1927 on the Grace side. The second part was built 40 years later in 1966. Both of them have had water problems in the basement. 1966 had two major problems. We think we've solved them. We hope so. So we're going to concentrate on 1927 and see all that shaded area I put in there. That's what we're going to dig up. Landscape, steps around the outside of the building, not all at once. We still have to have some of them. But we're going to tear up some of the steps, preserve them, and put them back in. And here's why we're doing it. It's a two-part thing. One is the water problem. The second is the foundation problem. We have a mini project right here between the stairwell and the canopy entrance. We have a roof drain that's a 30-foot high pipe. And it goes under the floor, and you've probably heard on the news that Hyde Park has combined sewers, right? Where the rainwater goes in with all the other stuff. Well, they tied that roof drain in under the floor with the basement toilets. So every time we have a really fast rain, we've got a water tower that's pushing water, among other things, up out of the toilets. So that's the first project. We're going to take a pipe, and we're going to run it back to the curb and run it across the parking lot to the street. The second one we got to do is take care of the water problem around the sanctuary. When they designed the building, the architectural drawings very clearly show there were supposed to be pipes on either side of the building. Instead, they put them under the floor, and it comes up out of the floor every time. We're cleaning up the basement about 3 to 4 times a year. Those are minor ones, but we've had a few major ones, like 2021, when it cost us $12,000 to clean up. So we're going to move the pipes back where they should have been. We'll take them to the observatory sewer, run it down the hill, and like good Methodists, we're going to be generous and send the water down to Knox Presbyterian. The second part of the project is the foundation itself. A modern foundation, you put stone up against the foundation so water can percolate down, and then you put what we call a footer drain along the bottom of the foundation to take the water away. A couple years ago, we dug a test hole right outside here, $6,000 to dig a hole, and guess what we found? None of that stuff. It was clay right up against the foundation, and the only seal on the foundation was a paper-thin sheet of tar that they had painted on with a paintbrush. And of course, y'all remember the big magnolia tree that used to be out here? That was about that big around. It was planted 5 feet from the foundation. We don't know what we're going to find, so we may have some foundation repairs to do. So we're going to do that state of the art. And I think I've talked enough. I'm going to turn it over to Mary for the next one.
Thank you, Dennis. Priority 2 is the building at 1314 Race Street, which we will focus on mission and preservation, and this project will cost $1.9 million. 1314 Race Street is a 3-story building constructed in 1876. It is currently uninhabitable and in desperate need of restoration due to age, neglect, and lack of maintenance. We inherited this building when we took over the stewardship of the Over the Rhine campus in 2012. It sat vacant in disrepair for many years as we wrestled with what to do with this 3-story structure. In 2024, our church went into a 9-month discernment process, and at its conclusion, with the approval of our servant leadership board, we decided to keep this property for future use. Since 1991, Found House has been providing families experiencing homelessness with a lifeline of care, shelter, and hope. For 35 years, our church proudly serves with this ministry by hosting 4 families at Hyde Park for 7 days at a time, 5 weeks a year. We just had 4 families leave this last week that were here with us and left on Sunday. Currently, families are shuttled every week to a new location throughout Hamilton County to sleep, bathe, eat, work, play, and live. One week they might be in Loveland, the next week on the west side, and the next week somewhere else. This project at 1314 Ray Street would provide one stay-in-place location as they transition from homelessness to permanent housing. The enormous stress and burden these families are navigating will be lightened, helping relieve anxiety, fear, and the hopelessness they might be experiencing by having some sense of stability and routine. This project will allow us to renovate the 2nd and 3rd floors to provide 8 bedroom suites, 1 for each family, much like a hotel with beds, mini fridge, microwave, and a full bathroom. Found House will manage their programming, care, and fund the operating costs of this ministry while still providing an opportunity for area church congregations to continue to serve alongside with 3 meals a day and community connection. It also provides the 1st floor for a laundromat, which I will talk about in a little bit. The average stay for a family in the Found House program is 80 days from the time they are accepted into the program until a more permanent housing solution is obtained. Providing this transitional housing for 8 families will be an opportunity to walk alongside our brothers and sisters who need love and encouragement during their darkest time, providing them with a light in the darkness. Jason?
Thank you, Mary. Priority number 3, in the amount of about $500,000, has been identified as a preservation item, ensuring our building remains a place for current and future worship. At the heart of this is the replacement of our aging boiler systems. The good news is it's nice and warm in here as it's cooled outside tonight. However, the challenging news is that we have 14 boilers, all between the age of 20 and 30 years old, and are all now obsolete. 3 of the boilers no longer are functional at all, and the rest are operating well below their original 70% efficiency ratings as they near the end of their lifespan. Since these boilers are obsolete, parts are hard to find, and modern high-efficiency boilers use very different technology. Unfortunately, we can't just simply replace old boilers with the new ones, one at a time, or mix and match, because they operate at different temperatures, pressures, and control strategies. Mixing them would compromise reliability and energy savings and could even cause system failures. Therefore, when we transition, we must replace the entire set with new high-efficiency units all at once. We've explored geothermal and solar alternatives, but their payback periods were much longer compared to the new boilers. Our plan is to replace the current 14 low-efficiency boilers with just 5 high-efficiency modern boilers, providing reliable, sustainable heat for years to come. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you. Priority 4 is the 1314 Race Street Laundromat, which will focus on mission and accessibility and will cost $750,000. Our church did extensive surveys within the Over the Rhine community to learn about what this unique community needs. Time and time again, we heard the same thing, the need for a laundromat that is affordable and convenient. We learned that there is a laundromat desert in OTR and that 1 load of laundry costs approximately $20 due to the shortage of supply and the very high demand. Economics 101. I think many of us take access to our own washers and dryers and closets full of clean clothes for granted, Put yourself in the shoes of someone who is trying to improve their situation, who may not have access to these expensive appliances, or who has only a few items of clothing to last them a week or a few days. By filling this community need, we will be giving dignity and pride back to the people who live and work in the OTR neighborhood who need it the most. We have done extensive research with another free or low-cost laundromat in the lower Price Hill area, and I'd like to thank the Washing Well organization for their time and assistance. They have set an example of what an accessible laundromat to every person can look like. We hope to build on their experience in this venture by providing a safe community laundromat. Our laundromat is located on the streetcar route and is very accessible to the community. We anticipate creating jobs with this business and will be in future conversations with leadership about its operation and management. And thanks to our own business analytics and research, the laundromat business plan projects to track to near break even in 15 months, with room to grow by adding a wash and fold service.
Thank you, Mary. Priority number 5, windows. This was actually number 3 and 4, I believe, on the list that you gave us last year with the survey. Aren't those little windows sticking out there with the windows hanging open just look so nice? We got about 30 of those around the building. We'd like to get rid of them. First of all, they're expensive to run. The windows installed in 1927 were single pane steel casement windows. That was the technology of the day. And then 40 years later, when they built onto the building, guess what they put in? The same thing. So we're looking to get rid of those and put in efficient double pane, aluminum or vinyl, whatever is the best technology. Something that doesn't leak, because air infiltration is one of your biggest energy losses. We've got somewhere around 300 windows to replace. That doesn't count any of the stained glass or those types of windows. That's just plain old windows. And it would be nice to replace them all at the same time, but we got an estimate of about $2 million to do all of them, and it would be a big job anyway. So we also prioritized, not only did we prioritize all the projects, but we prioritized the order of putting in windows. And the south face makes the most sense. That faces the parking lot, there's no shade, it's full sun. That's the one that's going to give you the best bang for your buck. So on the south face, we're talking about replacing 123 windows and putting in 13 window splits to replace these ugly things that are sticking out there. Now, what is a mini split? Well, somewhere along in time, someone figured out, some genius, that if you take air and you ram it into a wall at an angle, it'll split into cold and hot air. I don't know how they figured that out, but that's the short of it, okay? And what you see in the bottom right there is what it could look like, or it could be over the top of the window. You've seen those in some buildings. The condensers would be on the roof, and no heavy piping, no big duct work. It would be simple, flexible plastic tubing coming down to those units. What you see up there says the expected energy savings are 27%. That would be true if we replace all windows. If we just did the south side, it's a rough guess, 8 to 10% maybe. So let's go on to the next project, which is more of the same. The next priority would be to do the west wall. Why the west wall? It gets west sun, it gets the northwest winds in the winter, and it also has the most rooms per window. We would replace 33 windows on that side and 12 more mini splits. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the next person.
Thank you there, Dennis. Dennis has already had us look around the sanctuary here, but if we could take a moment and just look around, look at the pulpit, and take a look up at the beautiful ceilings, the beautiful arches, the windows. It's nice to take this all in. Priority number 7 for the amount of about $200,000 is also a preservation item. While our choirs and organs and pastors would continue to lead us in worship wherever we gather, The unique setting of our church building enhances our experience in important ways. The building provides an environment that supports and enriches our worship together. In the late 20th century, the 1980s, our sanctuary was painted as part of an effort to preserve the beautiful structure we call our church home. Now, about 40 years later, almost halfway through the building's life, it's time for a bit more care and attention. Our plan is to repaint all the plaster walls in the sanctuary. While doing this, we'll also repair water damage that's become visible in the transepts, helping to maintain and protect our church for the future. Dennis, if I could borrow the flashlight there for a minute, I'll show you some of the water damage that I'm talking about over here, if you'll follow me for a moment. Up here in the transept. Excuse me, howdy guys. Right up here, you can see it there. So in addition to the painting, we'll also need to do some plaster repair. And with that, I will turn it over to Dennis for priority number 8.
No more windows for a second, I promise. Accessibility. Like I said, some of us might end up in a stroller someday or something that looks like one. The cheapest access ramp is obviously the shortest one. The longer they are, the more expensive they are. And that also means the one that's the least high. So we looked around the property and we looked at where we might need one, and it turns out that the best place was right in front of the Welcome Center here. And that door right there that I've painted in is actually on the hallway side of the glass wall in the Welcome Center. So it's an ideal spot to put a ramp that will bring us down to the lawn. We've had situations where we've had funerals with columbarium involved, and 1 or 2 members of the family can't make it there. So this would be an ideal location for an access ramp. It also could be a shortcut to the chapel, and it would be great to be able to roll supplies down to the lawn when we have festivities out there rather than carry them down the steps. So that is priority number 8. Here comes priority number 9.
Priority 9 is a new kitchen and restrooms at the OTR church, which will focus on mission and accessibility and will cost $1.1 million. If you're familiar with the first floor of the Over the Rhine church, you know this is a space used for all kinds of activities and programs. From our monthly community breakfast to Grace on Race craft vendor sales, yoga classes, spiritual and educational programming, the potential for community-wide programs and services are endless, but this space has some issues. The kitchen is wide open to the entire space, which creates a lot of noise and an awkward relationship to the larger open area used for programming. The current restrooms are not accessible to everyone, or perhaps anyone. If you've been there, you know how tiny they are. They are extremely narrow and have an odd layout, which does not meet today's current building standards. This project involves relocating the commercial kitchen to an enclosed space to the back of the building, which will keep cooking and meal preparation separate from the main event space. This also allows us to open the windows along the south wall that are currently blocked by equipment, which will create a more inviting and aesthetically pleasing room, bringing back features of the original 1880 design. Adding new, larger restrooms with more fixtures will allow us to be ADA compliant and give us the ability to have larger events by accommodating more people. The changes will greatly enhance the usable space and allow us to potentially provide a venue that can be rentable for special events downtown, as well as to continue a wider variety of community program to serve our neighbors. Our next priority 10, is an elevator at the OTR campus to connect both buildings to enhance our mission outreach and provide accessibility at a cost of $904,000. I think we all know the benefits of an elevator. It allows us to move people to every area of the property, no matter what your age or ability. From baby strollers to those church carts carrying supplies, to moving people in wheelchairs and those of us with bad knees. An elevator allows us to open our doors, our services, and our ministry to everyone. By providing accessibility to all areas and levels of the church and the building next door, we are letting people know they matter and are important. This project includes the elevator that will access to all levels of the church and the 1314 Vray Street, a stairwell to the 4 levels of 1314 Vray Street, and associated circulation space. It is conveniently located at the rear of the property, but also central and accessible through an outdoor open-air courtyard between the 2 buildings, as well as through internal hallways. Constructing this piece in an urban core on a streetcar route on our property line edges will be a challenging project, but at the end result, it will allow us to continue our promise to provide ministry to all who enter these walls.
Thank you again, Mary. Earlier, we had talked about replacing the 14 obsolete boilers with 5 high-efficiency units. Priority 11 for about $400,000. We're looking at focusing on another crucial part of our system, the aging cast iron pipes that carry heated and cooled water from the boilers and chillers to the radiators and cooling units here and throughout the building. In 2019, after experiencing several pipe failures in the sanctuary and the refectory, the oldest parts of our church built in 1927, we replaced these cast iron pipes with corrosion-resistant copper piping. Unfortunately, leaking cast iron pipes are still causing problems in other areas, especially in our preschool area and outreach ministry spaces. Water damage and the risk of mold have forced us to close rooms at times, disrupting our programs and worship services. To prevent further leaks and protect our building, we plan to replace the remaining HVAC piping in the newer 1966 building as well. This will help ensure our church remains a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. And I turn it back over to Dennis.
Sorry, folks, it's windows again. We're going to the north and east side, and this time, instead of telling you why we should do these, I'm going to tell you why we put them on last. The north side doesn't get any direct sun. It's in the middle of the horseshoe where it doesn't get much wind. And if you look at the little theater up there, which looks like 4 windows, but their parts are separated by stone, a contractor looks at that as 30 windows. So, by doing the south and the west first, we're serving more rooms for less money, whereas these are the expensive ones, especially since some of them have curved tops on them, which are more expensive. So we've got 119 windows on the north, 62 on the east, and 5 mini splits. And if we do all of those, we hope we can do 27% savings. On to Mary.
Priority 13 is the preservation of the Over-the-Rhine Church exterior at a cost of $69,500. If you're not familiar with the OTR church history, the most significant item of note is that this church is the first German Methodist church in the world. It is also a designated historical site listed on the National Register of Historic Places, a very special distinction that comes with it some responsibility. Completed in 1880, this Romanesque revival gem was designed by renowned local architect Samuel Hannaford, who is also notably the designer of Music Hall, City Hall, and the Cincinnati Observatory at Mount Lookout, and many other buildings in Cincinnati and the Midwest. A member of the Winton Place Methodist Episcopal Church himself, Hannaford designed many other churches during his lifetime. However, only a few remain standing. This church was named after William Nast. This man and this building have made a significant contribution to the Methodist movement. Nast is credited with not only establishing the first German Methodist church in Cincinnati, but because of his training of new pastors, German Methodist churches were established in almost every state in the Union and in various parts of Germany, Norway, and Sweden. It's been a long time since the exterior stonework was cleaned and repaired. Completing this preservation work will allow this important historical structure to shine on for many years to come and be enjoyed by future generations. Our final priority is priority 14. It is an elevator at the Hyde Park Chapel and Education Wing, supporting our mission of Christian education and accessibility for all at the cost of $500,000. We all know the convenience and ease an elevator provides. As I mentioned earlier, if you've been at the Hyde Park Preschool on any given school day, you will see a lot of excited children heading towards their classrooms. But this simple task is often a challenge for the parent with multiple little ones. I remember those days of trying to keep up with my 3-year-old bundle of energy who liked to run fast and climb everything. But I was also carrying an infant in a car seat or a stroller, which was not very stair-friendly. Our current elevator, while handy, is not conveniently located by the preschool and Sunday school classrooms on the education wing of the church. Something as simple as walking my son to his classroom might have taken a very long and winding road to get there. I see families with multiple children or different ages or sets of twins and triplets navigating our 3 levels of classrooms and taking lots of trips back and forth to access the elevator. It's not convenient and often frustrating. An elevator located on the education wing side would benefit so many people, providing full access to the chapel, which is located a half level between our church's basement and first floor, as well as full access to the church basement, first and second floor classrooms, and accessible restrooms. An exterior elevator would limit work within the existing church footprint and limit the amount of interior changes necessary. Enhanced security for our preschool, nursery, and Sunday school families would also be achieved. Safety is a major consideration for parents when they are shopping for a church or school. Having a dedicated elevator for the education wing at Hyde Park could attract new families to our preschool and our church. Now, I want to thank you for your attention as we presented these 14 priorities. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Dennis for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Mary. Wow, a lot of work, huh? Lots of dreams. The building's actually in pretty good shape. We redid the roof in 2010. We put the chillers in 2014. We tucked, pointed, cleaned, and sealed all the stone just a few years ago. So we're in good shape. But we still have some things to do, and you can see that it's going to take some money to do that. They say a good sermon has 3 points, so I'm going to make 3 points, and then I'm going to move on to Nick for a motion, and we're going to do question and answers. The first point I'm going to make is every time I look at this board, which is the same as the thermometer that you have in your hands, I look at it and I say, oh, I wish we could just switch those two or move that one up and that one down. And I bet you every member of the building committee is still saying that right now, but we had to come to a consensus. And you may be saying that, right? But we can't do that. We'd be here all night. I had a sign in my office when I was in the engineering business that said, there comes a time in the history of every project when you have to shoot the engineers and start building something. So we can't do that tonight. This is going to be a one-shot vote. That's the order that the building committee was allowed to present, and that's what we're voting for, yay or nay, okay? The second thing is we're not going to replicate what they did in the 1920s. We are not taking out a $12.4 million mortgage. This is going to be a cash on the barrelhead deal. If we raise $3.5 million, we do the first 3 priorities. If we raise $6 million, we do the first 8 priorities, and so forth. No long-term loans, no debt. Now, we may have to take out a short-term bridge loan to pay a contractor if the money isn't coming in as fast as we wanted to, but no long-term debt of any kind. And the third one I want to say is something that I'm not allowed to tell you. We know there are some people that have said, well, I'll kick in on this if the endowment fund kicks in. And I can't tell you whether it's going to or not. That's up to Shane over here. He'll be talking about that in a little while. I'm simply going to say I've been smiling a lot lately, if that helps. Okay? So with this, are we going to question and answers, or are we going to, what's that? We're going to the motion. Okay, Nick, you're up. Where's Nick?
Yep. Dennis, Jason, and Mary, thank you for your presentation. Very, very well done. Nick? Yeah, thank you. Before we do questions and answers and before we vote, we want to get this matter properly before us. So I invite Nick to officially make the motion.
All right. Be it resolved that Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church, Cincinnati, Ohio, hereby accepts the report and work of the building committee constituted on April 7th, 2025, pursuant to paragraph 2544 of the 2020-2024 Book of Discipline of the United Methodist Church. Included in this resolution is acceptance of the priorities established by the building committee for both the Hyde Park and Over the Rhine or Grace on Ray Street campuses. May it be further resolved, a capital campaign directed by Horizon Consultant will engage in a plan to defray the expenses of the priorities of the building committee as presented at the Called Church Conference on November 10th, 2025, and approves the proposed project budget of $10,079,500.
All right, that motion is properly before us. My understanding is it does not need a second. It comes from committee. So it is properly before us. And are there any questions that you have before we vote?
Okay, me again from behind. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna come around, and I believe Pastor Kevin is supposed to join me from wherever you're. Hi, Kevin.
I'm here.
Yay. We are maybe the most perfect or least perfect people for this bit work we have.
Right.
I know. Okay, and then Kate and Todd are gonna direct the answers up here to members of the building committee. So, great, this is gonna be a fun example to start with. So, David, I would like you to say your name before you ask your question.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
We have one thing before questions and answers. We have our guests from Found House here, and so we would be remiss without them being able to just share the excitement that they're feeling about the projects first, before the questions and answers, because it might answer some things. So would you guys please come forward, Brian and Christy? Thank you.
Thank you. It's great being here. You guys are leading the way. It means a lot. Obviously, we're going through a bit of a transition, and yeah, we just need your leadership, and we take your example to the other churches and guilt trip them into following your example. So I was unfamiliar with the Methodist faith and kind of the building committee and the way that the congregation all comes together. And it's been wonderful to see kind of in person. So thank you.
Thanks. So if I had the forethought, would have recorded what you said about what this means to Found House and our families, because you really hit it on the head with that. If you have been with us for the past 35 years, you know the model and how we have gone and how it worked for a very long time. But then following COVID, we've really struggled to get back our congregations. We don't have nearly the support for various reasons. That a lot of our congregations just did not come back out of fear. So we only have 4 families a week now in the congregation model, and have struggled to rebuild back up to full capacity. So being able to have something long-term stable that our families will be able to reside in, not having the back and forth, the shuffle. Times have changed for our families, different dynamics. So them being able to have that little small piece in the world that they can call their own while they're going through this transition would mean the world to them. So I thank you, and as he said, we appreciate your guidance, leadership, and support on all of this. And we're here to answer any questions that you might have. I could talk forever about the programs and the things that we do because I'm very passionate about it, but I don't want to keep you here all night. But like I said, we are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you both.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
As I said before, we're gonna ask you to say your name and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm David Cola. Question about the inevitable cost overruns and contingencies, and how do we manage that?
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, great question. I'm going to turn that to Dennis or to Paul. How about Paul? Let's go to Paul. Paul does not want to speak publicly, so that the first question goes to Paul. You get a high five.
Yeah, Paul.
Well, we have built some small contingencies into every item. Of course, every budget is, we have used contractors and engineers to help establish some of the numbers. We've also gone back to historical data for some of them. Some of them are going to be, that's going to be the budget for it. There will be some surprises, I'm sure, but we've tried to minimize that. But like I said, we have built in some contingency to every item. And we've taken a hard look at everything and marched a number of contractors through as many of the items as we could.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Martz. If we get the full 10 million, how long are all the projects projected to take? And obviously the two different campuses can have projects going on at the same time, but will projects on each individual campus be done sequentially, or can multiple things be done at the same time?
There is an answer. Who wants that? You want that again? Look at this. Paul Bolster.
Thank you for that round of applause. Certainly, yeah, we can do many of the projects at the same time. Certainly at two different campuses makes it easy. And certainly we can be working on boilers and windows at the same time. It'll all be a function of how much, when the money comes in or how long we're authorized to start spending. But yeah, we can do many, and if you really said we could do all the projects, it'd be ugly as far as everything would be torn up. But yeah, we can do a couple of the projects at the same time.
Let's go.
Time-wise? Each project, of course, we have established a timeline. For instance, the Big Dig, we're looking probably at about 6 months, depending on, of course, on weather conditions. We have to be a little bit careful because we can't just tear out all the stairs in the back at the same time. We're going to phase it. It will create a number of obstacles for us, the amount of dirt that's created. So we're going to be conscious of that and do it in phases.
Let's go straight back, front row of the second section, right there. Here you go. Yep. Oh.
Hi, Dave Harpering. As part of the window project, you were talking about replacing 15 or installing 15 or more mini splits. Would that then reduce some of the piping project that needs to go on in the 1966 building?
Dennis can answer that question. He's Dr. Mini Split.
The mini splits just replace the window units, which are independent of the rest of the heating system, so it wouldn't affect the piping in any way. We do know that it takes more electricity to run what we already have than what it'll cost, or what electricity we need for mini splits. So we're in good position electrically, but it won't affect any of the piping at all.
I would like to add that having the mini splits, you have more control of that room. So if it's super hot in the building, you can cool down your room a little bit. So that's really nice.
Also, mini splits do not work for heating down below a certain temperature to the bitter cold. So we're always going to have boilers. But envision this. Suppose we heat the entire west wing with the boilers to 60 degrees and then use the mini splits just to bring rooms up as we need them. Because they're entirely independent. Even though you may have 4 or 5 rooms on one unit, you can still control all those rooms independently for both heating and cooling. They're really nice.
All right. Let's stay in the back, way back there, I believe in the red.
Yeah, Paul Swanson. Have you gotten any estimates from contractors, or you are selecting the contractors later?
Hang on.
Yeah. We certainly have not contracted with any contractors as of to date, but we have marched a number of them through the projects to get their best estimate for it. But there will be a bidding process for each project. For instance, windows, we've had 3 contractors, 3 manufacturers go through, and so we have those bids. They'll have to be updated, of course, but we do have bids for everything.
Okay, so you've you will get bids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's the business I was in, was
Right, at this point.
working with contractors, and the more bids you get, the more competitive it gets.
Oh, absolutely. But we have, in order to establish the budget, we did have contractors assist with us.
Okay, up here to the right. Yeah, let's go right here.
Earl Crossland, could you explain more about the relationship between Found House and our church as far as the responsibilities once this is constructed? For example, are they going to be paying rent or in the upkeep of the building? Do we have any kind of contractual relationship? Just tell us more about how that is anticipated to work.
That's a great question, Earl. Thank you. So we will be working with Found House leadership have representatives from both Found House and Hyde Park to create a memorandum of understanding before any project is done. So it clearly outlines what Found House is responsible for, what Hyde Park will be responsible for, and moving forward. That's financial, that's for programming, that's for all the things. But I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say Stacy did name that the operating cost for housing the 8 families would come from Found House. Does that answer your question? Do you want to confirm?
Yes. Yeah, I second what she said. We do handle the operating cost.
I concur.
Yes.
More verbal consent. We're here for it. Did that answer your question, Earl? Thank you.
Anybody over on this side? Going back, in the back? No, in the back there, front? Oh, right here, in the middle.
Okay, so there's a pledge date, April 19th. Are we going to be pledging money over 1 year or a couple of years, or how will that work?
Yeah. Oh, gosh, I get to answer a question. So the typical capital campaign is usually 3 years. So we're talking about between 26 and 29.
Yeah, over there on the side.
Barbara Fillion, will we get any help from the district on the downtown building, the Over the Rhine building?
We have an answer to that question.
Excellent.
Not just from the district. We do know that thanks to Christina Catrone and Kristen Ernst and Meredith, who helped to apply for a GO grant, which is a conference grant, we have been awarded it, but we do not know the amount. So yes, we already know that we will be getting support from the conference for that as well. It's not what we asked for exactly. We asked for 34,000, but my average, you want to speak to the average?
I don't know the average they get.
My guess is, I don't want to say a number.
The fact that you know that you got awarded a GO grant is more than what I know. That's held tight to the vest. Yeah, wow. But I'm glad. I'm happy.
I'm Drea Osterberg, and it's along these lines. So with that grant, when it comes, is that going to be on top of this, or will that replace some of what is being requested? Like, will that also help us to get to that goal sooner?
In addition to Jim Wilson's pledge card that he's going to fill out, yes, that will help us. It will help us.
But that grant is, any grant that we get has to go towards specific, and it was to say for the laundry machines is what we applied for, as well as the card readers. So any money that we get has to go towards that.
Okay, yeah, back.
Yeah, so Lisa Ernst, okay, just to expand on that, you requested a capital grant. That's what, I mean, because there's like $4.5 million or so for OTR, so you've requested capital to support that.
Yes, correct. For the.
Did I hear you say 34,000?
That is what we requested, yes.
Of the 4.5 million.
We had to be specific for the ministry aspect of it and to say how that would further making a community hub. And so we know, I mean, with only granting a couple thousands of dollars, we had to go with what we thought we could get.
Okay, so basically we could say it's support, but it's very minimal.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It is a drop in the bucket, but we hope to get lots of drops for very different resources.
All right, straight back to my right.
Hi, Jane Langford. With the OTR Grace on Race, will we continue all of the projects and things that we have going on currently to support the community with the redesign of the kitchen and the bathroom and the laundromat?
Yes, so far we are scheduling out programming through at least until the end of the capital campaign. We haven't done anything post that, so the first half of the year. And then once we understand what was pledged, we'll be able to kind of say this is what we can do moving forward, and understanding going based on the renovations and the plans for construction. But yes, we will still do the first floor of the building next door to the church. So we have the church building, which is 1310 Ray Street, and then we have the building next door, and that's 1314 Ray Street. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go in the back, and then we have two up here in the front. Yes.
Hi, I'm Abigail Greben. As far as the Found House thing goes, we at this point have one person on campus every day when we have guests staying in on our property. What happens with that over the 80 days or whatever, or year-long project? Does that mean other churches are going to be helping out with this?
Yes, other churches will be helping out with this, and they're working towards that model, but they already have a site where there's not an overnight host that's staying currently. So that's, do you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so right now, we initially we had piloted a split program where we put 4 of our families in townhomes. So we had 2 townhomes where there were 3 bedrooms. So we put 2 small families in each one. We have shelter aides that stay there during the day, but in the evening we did not have anyone there because it was small, and we have cameras on the premises. Where we're getting ready to move to for a temporary site where we can put all 4 of our families together, we will be enlisting the help of additional support from congregations that want to volunteer in that manner. And we're also going to hire an overnight shelter aide so that someone will be there overnight. But we are leaving the window or the door open rather for from my understanding, there are congregations and volunteers that like to do overnight. So we're going to leave that opportunity available for those that still want to do so.
And up here to my left.
Jake Osterberg, just a question for the committee. What triggers whether each project will proceed? Is it receipt of the pledges? Is it receipt of the funds? How does that process, or how do we decide when the project will actually be a go?
To take that one. So good question. Don't know completely the answer to that question yet, but we need to be able to have some cash on hand in order for us to be able to do projects. So we'll begin that process with a capital campaign. If there's a successful vote tonight, and we'll begin working towards that and then begin to figure that out of how we do those things. Again, I want to remind you that our plan is not to go into any major debt other than if we have to do a construction loan or something like that. So, did I answer your question? Okay.
Yeah. Staying up here to my left in the front, yes.
Okay, yes. Steve Dotterman. Is there a possibility of tax credits for historical preservation, and what would that entail?
Yes, we're going to move to Alan Williams from MSA Architects Design because Alan is an expert in historic tax credits.
Wow, with that lead in, I hope I have the answer. Yes, both of the buildings in Over the Rhine are historically contributing structures within the Over the Rhine Historic District. There are some, let me say, loopholes that we can work our way into in terms of taking advantage of the tax credits. As a non-for-profit, that becomes a little bit less clear than if somebody was for-profit, but through various mechanisms, it's something that we can do. The building has a number of historic elements that are still intact. I have actually had the pleasure of being in many, many Over the Rhine buildings, and it is the most intact historic building that I've ever seen. So in terms of getting historic tax credits, that's not an issue. Would you like to hear more about the process, or does that answer your question? Yeah, so there are two buckets of money. There are federal historic tax credits and state historic tax credits. And the state historic tax credits are capped at $5 million, and federal are capped at a percentage of the construction cost. So with both the buildings being able to go into that process, we essentially submit documentation that shows what we plan to do. And then after getting approval, we have to then document what was done. And so it's a part 1, part 2, part 3 phase. The part 2 is submitting what we plan to do. The part 3 is submitting photographs of what we did do. And through that process, then you get approval, final approval, and the tax credits then are awarded. The mechanisms through which they're awarded, they're not funds that are given to you all up front. They are typically dispersed over 5 years, and that process can also be made more simple in terms of construction financing, because you can bring other partners on board who can take advantage of the tax credits, essentially buy them from you at typically 85 to 80 cents on the dollar, and then you have funds that help to basically fund a portion of the construction costs. Now, the tax credits themselves, if you look at the drawing over here on the right, on the right-hand side, there we go, thank you. The stair tower, any addition essentially would not receive funds for historic tax credits. If you think of the building itself, if you were to see that as a dollhouse and you picked it up and you shook it, anything that fell out would not be applicable for tax credits. But anything attached to the building, any new systems, new roofing, anything like that would be the stabilization and reuse of the historic building, and so it would essentially be applicable for historic tax credits.
All right, we're going to come right here in just a moment, in the sense that we want to make sure we entertain all your questions, but we're getting to the point where if this motion passes, we have another presentation and another set of questions and answers. So I'm not here to rush you, but I'm here to remind you the questions that you need answered before you feel prepared to vote. So I'm going to go right back here to the front.
Earl Crossland again. I see that priority number 4 is $750,000 to do the laundry, but who is going to run it, and are we going to incur ongoing maintenance and operational costs? Could you explain that more?
Yeah. Yeah, so we are still in the early stages of what that will look like operationally. We've done more of the business development of what it will cost ongoing to be able to say within 15 minutes we believe we'll be able to break even. I believe the goal, we will know whether we're going to own the equipment or we're going to rent the equipment too. If we own the equipment, that is the 15-month piece that will be able to break even rather than making the rent. I will say that we have had already multiple organizations within Over the Rhine who have said that they are interested in being part of helping to operate the laundromat, including Found House. They're like, please keep us updated for that. Same for Over the Rhine Community Housing. This is something that they understand the community needs, but I do know that we want to prioritize hiring people within the community, because that is the model that Community Matter uses with the washing well, and that really helps to build community, as well as keeping the laundromat running as safely and efficiently as possible, of doing laundry with your neighbors, with your neighbor working there. Does that answer your question?
To know, I'm sorry. I just wanted more clarity on who is running. Is Hyde Park going to run the laundromat?
That is to be determined of what that will look like. There will be overseen aspect of it, but will it be like a TDG where we contract that out of doing that, or is that done in-house, or what that looks like operationally? We have not figured that out, but that's a great question, and it is something we know and we need to address.
Like other duties as assigned?
No. So just to clarify, many of you may not know about TDG, but they do all of our custodial and maintenance services here, and we do a contract with them annually. Actually, I think it's a 3-year contract, but you get the idea.
All right. Yes.
Jackie Abdullah. Priority 10 is addressing the accessibility at the OTR campus. Is there any dependency on the earlier projects, on the found house, housing, et cetera, on having that building be accessible with the elevator?
Mary, want to handle that one?
We did talk to them about the need for an elevator, and they said that it was not. They have townhomes that they put people in that do not have elevator access. So it's not necessarily a requirement, but we felt that having full accessibility is important to us, just as far as people with disabilities and things like that. So not a requirement in the initial getting it done, but something we'd like to add.
All right. I sense that you're ready. We're good? All right, the motion is properly before us. It is as presented on your blue paper. If you are for this motion, you put a mark in the yay. If you are against, you can put a mark in the nay. If you choose to abstain, likewise, you put a mark in that box. So I'll declare that ballot number 1 is now open, and please mark your ballot accordingly, and people will be around to receive those.
Yeah, and then just to add, Jim, after you're done voting, please pass your ballots in towards the center aisle, and Meredith and Dana will be by to collect them. And hopefully that's not a surprise to Meredith or Dana.
All right.
You may fold it, Chuck, however you want.
All right. My friends, if we can kind of come together, we have the results. So if we could come together again, we'll share the results of ballot number 1. All right. All right, we ready? Altogether, there were 127 votes cast. Those voting for the motion, 121. Those voting against were 5. Those abstaining, 1. So the motion passes 95% in favor, 4% not in favor. All right, let's invite Shane forward, and from the Endowment Committee, he would like to continue us on here this evening. Shane?
Good evening. Much like Victoria. Is that better? All right. Much like Victoria, this is a new view for me. So I appreciate you having patience. And the other thing that I would say is I'm not going to talk about plaster or windows or boilers, unfortunately. So again, thank you for coming. I'm Shane Brown. I work on the Endowment Committee with some great folks. I'm going to introduce those guys in a minute, or those folks in a minute. But if we go to the first slide, the very first thing I wanted to cover was, why are we even here? Why are we talking? We had the vote. It was a very good vote. Lots of information from Dennis and the building committee. I would say it was very clear that the congregation, as part of that feasibility study, expected the endowment to play a role. What that role was, not really known, but it was very, very clear coming out of that feasibility study they expected us to play a role. Also, I sat in on every one of those OTR discernment sessions, and I would tell you it was not very clear that folks understood the role the endowment actually plays in our day-to-day activities. So I think it's part of understanding that we had to do some work there. To support that capital campaign that we've now just approved moving forward with, we had to determine kind of what role we could play within the guidelines that we have as our remit, and also for all those legacy donors over the years. And what I would say is, we've talked about this a long time in the committee, well over a year. We've known this was coming, and I believe we're ready to help if it's approved by the congregation. And I think the last thing I would say is, we are very blessed to be in this position where folks, even sitting with us today, families from years and years ago, have made gifts over the years that have appreciated to the point where we can even have this conversation. We're a unicorn, as Pastor Todd told us in the last meeting. I think Jim would probably concur about that. But we're just very blessed to be in this position, to even have this discussion going forward. So at this point, I'm going to introduce, or actually have our members stand up, voting members of the endowment committee, so you know who all is on this committee with me. Other folks that are non-voting, but very, very helpful in the process of understanding what's going on. So please, those of you that are on this slide, please stand up. We didn't do this on our own. We also have external help from advisors of Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, really helping us out understanding kind of what roles we could play, what things we could get into, what things are kind of no-nos. And this is an ongoing process which took us a long time to kind of work our way through. So kind of as some background, I'm going to go quicker than Dennis on the building. The endowment was started in 1977 with a gift of about $34,000. It enabled, there's a policy document out there which talked about the governance over the endowment. And what I would say is our most recent big update to our guidelines and in all of our investment policy statements are from 2014. So, you know, the 2014 timeframe, there was some large things going on, and really a good update to our governance structure, the committee, kind of the goals that we have and what we need to be looking out for. As of the last quarter, September 30th, the endowment value in total was about $41.6 million. So a wonderful sum that has appreciated, again, from all of the gifts from all of our past donors, large and small. We have 4 primary endowment funds and then 1 general fund. The building fund, or a building endowment, that was established in '76, a ministry endowment, ministry and outreach primarily focused, a Kilgore endowment, which focuses on one specific wing of the building, the March Scholarship Endowment, which helped the youth of Hyde Park as they're going to college, and the Dixon General Fund, which was established in 2003 and helps out with ongoing things. So just size-wise, of that 41.6, what makes up the money? Approximately 64% is in the ministry and outreach side of things. About 29% of it's in the building, and the rest is kind of split between the Scholarship Fund, the Dixon Fund, and the March Scholarship. So since 2018, just to kind of give you now what's going on, that endowment has grown 50%. And what I would say is that takes into account something on the next slide that I'm going to talk about. Part of what the endowment provides is every year it provides a significant amount of money to the church for its annual operating expenses, for mission and outreach work, which we do. So over that same time period, we've taken out approximately $12 million that has gone to helping the building, helping the ministry, helping the outreach as part of our day-to-day activities. And you know, we have known this is where we have good conversations once a quarter with Bank of America to help us manage this endowment going forward with that eye towards long-term capital preservation and also kicking off a substantial amount of income to help us serve you know, the ministry, the outreach, all of the programs that we try to entail. So as we look at how, you know, each year, how much does this endowment kick in? It kicks in approximately $1.7 million, or almost 50% of what we as a church spend in total. So all of those things, as we look around, the amounts that are going towards the building today, the amounts that are going towards the ministry, the apportionments, a good chunk of it, I know. But all of the, you know, the salaries, things like that, each year the endowment is kicking off a substantial amount, providing it to the church and managing it so that we can continue to do the work that we all have said that we want to keep doing. So as I look at that yellow bar for next year, one of the things we just did, we have approved as a committee what the number looks like for next year. It's about $1.8 million. Again, that market value has grown. The stock market and the equity markets, as well as the bond markets, have had nice returns over the longer period, and it's provided us some great things that we can then in turn be able to provide to the church to be able to manage on an ongoing basis. So of your $1.8 million, probably about 2/3 of that next year is going to go to mission, outreach, apportions, and stuff like that. Building gets about 30% of that, and then the rest kind of gets allocated elsewhere. So the bulk of it's actually going towards doing those things that you see on a day-to-day basis from Kate and Christina, for example, we do, you know, this is what we're trying to do and what we're trying to keep up with. That's what we've been doing. What I would say is, we heard from all of you, you want endowment to do stuff. You want endowment to be part of this. You want endowment to play a role. Well, to do that, we had to figure out what role we could play. What things were we eligible to do or capable of doing? What things were kind of beyond the scope of what we could do based upon, A, what's kind of best practice out in the world for managing endowments? B, what is the operating document from 2014 tell us we should be doing? And C, what kinds of things could we support on that capital project list? And we do things like that. So, you know, we really have had a lot of discussions on ensuring any recommendation honors the wishes of each donor, large or small, for how their gift is supposed to be used. That is our ultimate goal. We believe that we can manage that. We also really need to preserve the purchasing power of each gift over time. Interesting concept. That first gift that I talked about earlier, $34,000 back in 1977, that's about what my parents paid for their home in the mid-70s in upstate New York. So a farm with some barns and 15 acres. You know, today, that's about $180,000. That $34,000 back then costs the same as $180,000 today. So we really looked at how do we ensure that we're preserving the purchasing power of what each one of our gifts or each one of our donors said they were going to be giving us. And the other thing that I would highlight is Our calculation of that $1.8 million I talked to you about, that's based upon a 20-quarter market average of the portfolio over a 5-year period. So we look at every year, we look at the trailing 20 quarters, and we go through a fair number of significant calculations to kind of arrive at what we think the draw is going to be this year, or for next year. And one of the things that we didn't want to get into was significantly harming or significantly reducing beyond what we felt like we could for that annual operating budget. So we tried to have that balance of, could we come up with a solution, but could we also kind of sort of maintain as best we could the trend line of what the endowment is doing. What I would say is the rough rule of thumb is for every $1 million that endowment goes down in value permanently, we need to reduce the annual budget by $50,000, or we need to find $50,000 of pledges to cover that. So that's always the challenge every time, having done a few budgets with Doug and Pastor Todd, it's always a challenge. We get to a certain point, we need to know where's the budget going to be and what's that draw going to kick in, and can we count on it, and can we make up a difference? And so what I would say is always walk around with, if we take $1 million out of the endowment, that ultimately affects us by $50,000 on an ongoing basis over time. So in summary, kind of where we landed as a committee. It's our recommendation, and keeping, again, I'll preface this by saying, keeping in mind we're trying to maintain what our donors have said, what we've promised them by their gifts, large and small. Can we maintain that purchasing power? Can we maintain what they're trying to do? Our recommendation is for the endowment to provide $2 million of funding in support of the capital campaign. What I would say is that funding, though, is contingent upon the capital campaign surpassing a minimum of $4 million in pledges, which I feel totally confident we as a church can do. The time frame for funding that we would look at would be over a 4-year period, covering 2026 through 2029. Kind of syncing up, and again, I'm not going to have Paul help me with questions, but I did go to Paul and say, when are you going to spend that money? Because we wanted to try to time, our support as best we could to what we thought the project schedule would allow. And what I would say as well is we as a committee felt strongly that the work that the building committee did, that's what we're supporting. We're not supporting 14 other projects that aren't on the list. This is contingent. This is supporting the work that Dennis, the building committee, and the rest of the folks have done. How do we get there? How do we do that within the construct of what we've been approved, what's possible? To accomplish this, I would say we recommend as the endowment committee raising the current maximum allowed annual distribution rate from its current 5.5% less expenses to a maximum of 8% less expenses on a temporary basis. We'd focus on temporary for the 4-year period of 2026 to 2029. Again, this is all contingent upon surpassing the $4 million target in total, which I feel good about. I'm going to wrap up and try to get us back on time. What I would say is just, I have a t-shirt that I got from New Life Furniture Bank. It's one of our partners, one of our mission partners. So it is one of the ones that we help out every year. And it's one of the ones that I enjoy going to do stuff at. I think it's very cool. It's kind of one of my favorite shirts because, as my wife would know, it's at the top of my pile frequently. So I just go grab what's on top and I go from there. But what I would say is that t-shirt says 3 things. 1, do good. Big letters, do good. That's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to follow the lead of those who came before us with the endowment, blessed us with all the gifts that they did. And we're really looking to build upon that in every way, shape, or form. Second point is volunteer. So obviously a plug to Kate and everybody else, get out and volunteer. But what I would say is thank you to my committee who've been great to work with on their volunteer basis. Every one of you has been awesome. And my thanks to the building committee for getting us to the point where we could have a thermometer slide to look at to be able to know what to do here. And finally, the last line on there was donate. And it applies to us all. It's time. It's time from our perspective to, do the capital campaign a thing here and blow it away. Make all of this kind of go away in terms of the prioritization question Dennis might have even referred to. It's time. Donate, and don't forget to donate to the annual pledges as well. We need you to do that too. I'll plug that for Pastor Todd while I'm up here and the finance crew. This is your chance to do it. This is what we would propose doing.
All right. Thank you very much. So would you like to, yes. You and your committee have done great work, so thank you for that. So now, would you like to properly put the motion before us?
Yes. I move to authorize up to $2 million of contributions from the endowment to the capital campaign. These funds will be provided by increasing the annual draw of 5.5% up to a maximum of 8% over a 4-year period. This will be contingent upon the receipt of greater than $4 million in congregational pledges. The 4-year period will begin in 2026 and run through 2029.
Thank you. That motion is properly before us, comes from a committee, does not need a second. So as it's before you, once again, we'll entertain any questions.
And I'm going to go down and join Pastor Todd at this point.
All right. Looking over here, any questions here in the front right?
Ooh. Yep.
Yep, over there on the left.
Oh, I thought you were going Barbara Fillion. So, Shane, can you confirm that it's just...
He's shaking hands.
I'm getting clarification
Sorry.
as I walk in.
That it's just the building and ministry endowments that would be used? Are you going to use the general fund?
We are not at a point where we have decided that. We are going to wait to kind of see how that all plays out when I get to the final stage of how much, where does the thermometer end?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
So at that point in time.
Because the windows in the Kilgore room, I guess, could be funded out of the Kilgore fund.
What's that?
I guess the windows in the Kilgore room could be funded out of the Kilgore fund.
That's actually one that is,
yeah. Okay.
I personally would look strongly
But not the scholarship fund.
I don't believe so.
All right, thank you. Other questions?
Shane, another one from the Fillion family, John Fillion. So what would keep it from being less than $2 million?
Well, the first thing would be that the congregation doesn't step up to making it to $4 million. That's the big triggering item. And that's the unknown for us as a committee. We don't know at this point. So we believe very, very strongly, based upon the feedback, that they can get there. But as a committee, we felt comfortable recommending that under the assumption that we would, as a congregation, make it to the $4 million, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, there in the red in the middle on my left.
Mary Pierce. I would just like to have explained for me to better understand if the $4 million is raised, and then that's when the endowment would start to kick in, correct?
That's
right?
correct. As
Okay.
far, we're kind of waiting at this point to see how the campaign works out.
And then over 4 years, that would be over 4 years, that up to $2 million would be taken from the endowment.
That's correct.
And would that be $500,000 the first year and $500,000 the second year? I'm trying to understand how that would be
I think what I would say is it's going to be roughly equal, but it may not be. It's part of that will go back to what the building guys can think they can do in specific years or specific periods. There's going to be a lot of conversations as we go through our draw calculation for next year on how, again, assuming we make the $4 million, how much is it versus how much is it that needs to wait? It is a maximum, and I would anticipate it being relatively equal over 4 years. The other thing I would point to is kind of the incoming of the pledge money. Kind of matters too. If folks are great and pledge before the end of this year as part of this campaign, that will help us ease some of the needs perhaps that the construction or the building committee and SLB Finance has. And it may allow us to kind of be flexible and not take as much out year one and maybe a bit more year two. We just don't know yet.
Thank you. Yes, there on the left, a couple rows from the middle.
Hi, Mike Hickerson. So how does the endowment return compare to like an index fund or the market over that same period? And what's the reason for the large drop from 2021 to 2022?
Well, one thing I would say is our return versus what our targets are, Bank of America has exceeded those on an annual basis since they've become managers in 2017. David Scott gave me a data point that our number compares very favorably with what the district returns are or conference, returns are. 2022, to answer that question, 2022 was a horrible year. And we covered this with our Bank of America folks on last week. Just to kind of recap again, why? Well, the stock market was down significantly. Interest rates went up significantly over that period, so that killed your bond funds, and inflation was through the roof. So between the combination of all those three things, that's what 2022 was. And so we've kind of come out of that period, grown through it, and moved on beyond that.
Thank you. All right.
That's not me, is it? It's mine? It's probably my daughter asking me what's for dinner.
All right. I got the sense that you're close of being ready.
Find my iPhone alert for some reason. Must be I'm too far apart from my phone. My wife will be shocked.
All right. All right. I'm not seeing any other hands. We'll proceed to vote.
Well done. Bravo. Thank you.
So ballot number 2 now is properly before you. If you support it, once again, you mark yay, against, nay, abstain. You mark that accordingly. So they'll be down the aisle to collect the yellow ballot. So ballot number 2 is now open. Okay, so the ballots are here in front of you. Once again, any other yellow ballots, last opportunity. Then I'll declare the yellow ballot closed. We'll take a moment and wait for the count. All right, friends, are you ready for results of ballot number 2? This time we had 126 ballots cast. 124 voted in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention. So motion number 2 passes by 98.5% in favor. Before Victoria and Al come forward, it's been my honor to preside at your special church conference. I wish you the very, very best. This is a wonderful church, and I thank everybody from the pastoral staff, the committees, the surrounding folks involved in all that's been before us tonight. You have done great work to prepare and to just do a wonderful job explaining to the congregation the opportunity that's before us. So before Victoria comes, I would like to offer a word of prayer. Holy and gracious God, we give you the thanks foremost of what has happened here this evening, the glory, the honor, the praise. And we stand at a moment in the life of this church that we don't know what the future holds, but we definitely know who holds the future. And we believe the one who holds it has a good smile, great excitement of the opportunities that is about to be poured out upon this church. May you move, O God, in the hearts of all the people of this congregation as they start to consider how they're part of the dream of this step forward into the future. And when we get to the finish line, we know that it's just the starting line. But in the journey, guide our steps, bless this work. May the glory be to you. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
I have knocked over my obnoxiously large Stanley Cup. Don't worry, nothing spilled. Okay, next steps and where we're going. Al and I are delighted to officially be the co-chairs of the capital campaign you all voted to approve. Woo! And here's a very brief what's next. If we go to the next slide, Todd. Al's gonna, you wanna read out?
I'll read out.
Okay. And when your name is announced, please stand to be recognized.
Please. Amy Burgess, Jason Burgess, Kristen Ernest, Rick Edwards, Liz Gosnell, Will Gosnell, Dave Harpring, Charlotte Kuhlman. Where did that come from?
I don't know.
I don't know. Victoria Coleman, I know where that came from. Bill Mattingly and Holly Mattingly. Want to do those?
He's telling me I'll do the next column. Jill Magruder, Larry Magruder, Christine McHenry, Teddy Myers, Al Painter, this guy, Nick Pearson, Andrea Sloan, Lauren Chazoon, Patrick Wantz, Dave Warren, and Laura Warren. Oh yeah, clap. Yeah. We are about to spend a lot of time together, and thank you to those who have said yes. Our work is now beginning. I also wanted to ask a certain someone to stand. With us tonight is Craig Miller. He's laughing because he hates that I'm doing this. Senior Vice President at Horizon Stewardship, who is our capital campaign consultant. Craig has just been a delight to work with, as have all of our staff members behind the scenes, preparing the way for this campaign to commence. So if we go to the next, oh, Todd's already done that. Look at that. Save the date. We are 160 days away from Commitment Sunday, okay? So get ready to see our faces a lot more and all of those who have stood. And if you want to get involved, please come talk to me or Al. With that, we are concluded. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.